Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Many of us, for those who were not at the ICANN conference earlier this week, many of the people in this room attended the ICANN meeting at the AC Bella Sky, and the meeting's ended and they're kind enough to join us before they head back home. People from all corners of the earth are here. There were about 2,000 to 3,000 people at the ICANN meeting, and ICANN is in charge of, or is the organization that coordinates a grassroots process to determine what policy should be established for domain names and the DNS. Most of the people here are very familiar with that and put a lot of work into making that somewhat work. Some of the folks here are from the FinTech Lab and some local attendees as well. I'm Ken Hansen, and I'm the organizer of the Blockchain Roadshow. This is the first event we're doing. We called it Blockchain 101 Information Session for a reason. A lot of this is going to be very conceptual. We're not going to get down in the weeds of how the code is written or how you would stand up a node in a blockchain network. So it's mostly business oriented. But you should walk away from here with a fairly solid understanding of what blockchain is, what are some of the use cases for blockchain, why is it important, why should you care about blockchain, and maybe you'll start thinking about some of the things you'd like to do using blockchain technology. With that, I'd like to give our host here, this is at the FinTech Lab, I'd like to give Rasmus a chance to introduce the FinTech Lab for you. And we really appreciate their providing this space for us today.
Thanks, Ben.
Rasmus?
Yes. So welcome everyone to Copenhagen FinTech Lab. We are very, very happy to co-host events like this. This is the first dedicated FinTech co-working space in Scandinavia. Actually, I think it's the first in Europe. Now we see other spaces and hubs popping up all over. But we kicked this off on the basis of an association that works in the sphere of combining academia, financial institutions and entrepreneurs. And back in September last year, we established this Copenhagen FinTech, a members association with around 100 members, everything from financial institutions to IT companies and law firms and whatnot. A lot of different companies, all interested in FinTech. This is sort of a way to build and maintain and grow an ecosystem, FinTech ecosystem based in Copenhagen. And while doing that, we also did some research and found that why not create a physical space where we can meet and network and sort of make an epicenter from where to build the ecosystem. We did some research and found a lot of information on how that could be done and who was interested and who would be willing to partner in a project like this. And so last year in October, we finally opened the doors here for the first residents, and in November we had the official launch, November 10th. And basically Copenhagen FinTech is financed through the members. They pay a yearly membership fee. But this place took a lot more financing, so we gathered a bunch of partners and sponsors. And that is, among others, Financial Services Union, which is our neighbor, and the Danish Bankers Association, and the City of Copenhagen. also. So these three partners were sort of the main drivers for creating this. And then we also have a few other partners and sponsors. There's a few banks and so on. So a nice group of partners that are also participating in this because they want to be close to fintech, want to be close to the innovation, and all the fintech entrepreneurs and the network that we can bridge them to. So basically what we do here is provide office space, as you can see, for fintech entrepreneurs. They all pay a rent, simple as that. But the thing is that we're not just an office, we are what we call a co-working space. And that means that we provide like this full package of helping companies grow. We like to say that this is a launch pad. This is not an office, but we accelerate their business. All over the world, the last 10, 15 years, in the startup world, you have seen accelerators, incubators, all these types of concepts. So we're not an accelerator because we don't say you can only be here for 3 months. We're not an incubator as such. We don't take any equity in the company here. But we do take elements from those programs. So like mentoring, doing events, a lot of networking, matchmaking with potential investors, potential partners, with banks and so on. So what we do is we provide them with network and the right contacts to help them grow. And hopefully help them grow a lot faster than if they were anywhere else. So that's sort of the concept behind this. Right now we have 25 companies here. I believe it's around 6 companies or so working within blockchain somehow. 5 or 6 companies, yeah. The others are working on everything from trading platforms to working with data to benchmark and credit rate companies, and there's some investment, robo advisors. So a lot of different stuff is going on here, and we are not very narrow in our definition of fintech. We like to sort of welcome all that has an interest in it or in the technologies behind it, you could say. So yes, around 6 companies working with blockchain here, and you will meet a couple of them. Talk for one, and Simon later from Chainalysis. There's different aspects of blockchain and what they do, so it's going to be interesting to learn from them. Besides from this, we also have a lot of other events here, and among other things, we do workshops, we do pitches, so pitching sessions where our startups can meet partners, investors, and we gather in bundles startups to pitch for these partners. And not only with the startups here, so on that roll-up it says become part of the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is obviously bigger than this place, so we also invite startups from around the country to join in events, and we like to keep things open, and that's why we also do a thing like this and co-host this event. So once again, welcome. If you have any questions today, I will be around. I do have a few meetings, so but I'll stick around. And toilets, you know where they are. Wardrobe, you know where that is. Coffee, water, soda. I think you're set. We'll have some cake and stuff later. Wi-Fi. Huh? Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi. There's a guest network here, and I can help you set that up.
I can bring it there. Can you?
Yep. You can also use that one. So if you use that one, you log on to the one called FinTech.
Yeah.
Yeah. That should be working quite fine.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Rasmus. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
If anyone needs to use the restroom at any time, logistics right through that door on the right-hand side. We intend for this to be a very informal, interactive session, so feel free to just jump in with questions at any point. To some degree, blockchain is new. We're learning together. If we don't have the answer for you, someone else in the room might have it, or we will take that away and we'll get back to you with the answer. This is the agenda for this afternoon. We have 3 hours with a break in between. We're going to start with some basic elements of blockchain. uh, and talking about, why is all this buzz about blockchain? Recently, there have been a lot of major stories involving blockchain with very prominent companies. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. Then we'll break down some of the components of blockchain. What is a distributed ledger? How do transactions get validated in a blockchain network? What are smart contracts? There are various types of blockchain networks. In fact, there are really many types of blockchain networks, but two major categories are public blockchain networks and private. So we'll talk about the distinctions and uses for each of those. Then Thorkild will give us try to tie all those components together for us with a video and an application that he put together that involves the game Monopoly. So that should be interesting. We will have by Skype, we'll have this recently formed global blockchain business council join us. One of the executives there, Sebastian Voss, will join us via Skype and tell us what that initiative is all about. We'll go through some use case examples, try to make it real. Hive Online is actually not here today. We thought they would be able to participate, but they're in Sweden, so we won't have a look at Hive Online, but that's something you can have a look at when you get a chance. Those from ICANN will appreciate the fact that their domain name is hive.online. We have Ronnie Bosing from the CEO of Open Ledger here, and he's going to tell us about the Open Ledger platform and some of the applications for the Open Ledger blockchain. Then Erica Mann will walk us through some of the legal, regulatory, policy issues that are associated with blockchain. Blockchain is a relatively new thing. Governments have not figured out, what the policies and regulations need to be. There are still lots of questions that need to be resolved there. So Erica will lead us in a discussion of those things. Chainalysis, which is a company here at FinTech, will talk to us about a platform, software, and consulting they provide for regulatory compliance in a blockchain environment. And then for those who we hear from ICANN, we will have some discussion of domain names, DNS, and blockchain. There are a number of companies selling names. There are DNS-like functions for blockchain. So the two worlds do intersect, and we'll have some discussion of that. And then at the end, hopefully we'll also have some time for some open discussion. So that's the day. We're going to jump right in with the question everybody asks me when I meet them. Oh, Ken, you're working on blockchain? Great. What is it? Right? They've been reading articles. They've been hearing about blockchain. There are dozens and dozens of stories in the media every single day about blockchain. And because it's relatively immature, people describe it in different ways. In part because there are so many different use cases and applications and flavors of blockchain. The terminology is not very standardized. So you will hear it described in different ways. We'll try to crystallize all that into a definition that's useful for all of us. So here's a high-level definition of blockchain. Here are a couple of them. There are, for every person you meet who's involved in blockchain, you'll get a definition. Every one of them will be slightly different. But Don and Alex Tapscott, father and son team, are the authors of the book Blockchain Revolution, which is a best-selling book right now about blockchain and how it's going to change the world. And this is how they describe blockchain. And in the description, they're giving you some of the benefits. It's an incorruptible digital ledger, so meaning it cannot be changed. of economic transactions, programmed to record financial transactions or any transactions involving anything of value. Of course, the application most are familiar with and have heard about is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just one of the things of value that can be on a blockchain and can involve transactions. So here's another description, a little bit more down into the details. A distributed ledger. We're going to talk about what a distributed ledger is. That stores a permanent and tamper-proof, time-stamped record of transactions that are what the terminology is immutable, can never be changed. It's peer-to-peer. It's a peer-to-peer architecture, meaning there's no centralized marketplace or exchange. There's no one controlling the blockchain. It's all peer-to-peer, and that has some efficiencies we'll talk about here, and can also reduce cost and speed up the transactions as well. Okay, so those are a couple definitions. We'll get into what all that means right now, but these are some of the big announcements. These are announcements just in the last 30 days, and you'll see how major they're. You know, Maersk, the container shipping company, the ocean-going shipping company, announced a partnership. They're joining a partnership with IBM. IBM has an initiative called Hyperledger, and they plan to have, it's an industry initiative, they plan to have 10 million cargo containers on a blockchain by the end of this year for the purposes of tracking those cargo containers as they move around the world. Walmart also made an announcement with IBM. They if you know the scale that Walmart operates on. When Walmart adopted EDI many years ago, maybe 20, 25 years ago, that is what drove the momentum for EDI and drove adoption. They told their partners, their vendors, if you don't implement EDI, we're not buying from you. Your products will not be on our shelves. And that really accelerated the adoption of EDI. They are now investing in blockchain in a very big way, and I wouldn't be surprised for them to give that same message to their suppliers, their partners, their vendors at some point in the future and accelerate adoption. They're also involved in food safety using blockchain. So this article you see up there is about how they're tracking food from the farm to the table. Where did the food come from? How long ago was it harvested? Is it still fresh? Was it kept at the right temperature? How was it grown? Was it organically grown? If there's a problem with the food, they can easily trace it back to one of those steps in the process. A consortium of Japanese banks, 27 or so Japanese banks have are going to be working with a company called Ripple for wire transfers. These are near real-time wire transfers that can happen in minutes instead of days, and at a much lower cost than a traditional wire transfer. A lot of banks in the US are now participating in Ripple, and 27 Japanese banks just joined recently. If you've been following the value of Bitcoin in the last year, it's more than doubled. At one point, not too long ago, it was over $1,500. It began the year, I think, at 500 some odd dollars per Bitcoin. There was a securities and exchange decision about whether there could be a Bitcoin ETF in the US, so it's dropped a little bit. But just a couple weeks ago, one Bitcoin was worth more than an ounce of gold. So it's grown quite a bit in value. These announcements are literally within just the last few weeks. There have been many more announcements before this, but you can see by the size of the companies and their investment that blockchain is starting to accelerate. IBM has 600 employees working on, dedicated to blockchain. They have a blockchain business unit. Deloitte has a blockchain business practice, PwC. All the major consulting firms have blockchain initiatives or practices. So this is a little bit of what's happened in current events recently. Now, where did it all start? Bitcoin started with a white paper by this fellow here, Satoshi Nakamoto. Nobody knows who he is. He wrote a white paper that laid out the framework for how Bitcoin would work. And what he was trying to do is solve what they call the double spend problem. The double spend problem is the reason why when you give somebody a check and they put it in the bank, it doesn't go into their account that minute or even necessarily that day. At night, they freeze all the accounts, they move all the money around, and the next morning you have access to your money. The reason they do that, of course, is if I gave one of you a check for $100 and your bank gave you access to the $100, and then I gave someone else a check for $100, the same $100, and they put it in the bank, and the bank gave them access to that funds in their account. I just spent the same money 2 times. That's why the banks freeze everything and move everything around at night. Well, in digital currency, that was an even bigger problem because there was nothing physical associated with it. A lot easier to spend ones and zeros multiple times with multiple people and have double, triple spends on the same currency. Well, this white paper described a way that you would be able to prevent the double spend and have transactions happen in real time, within minutes, rather than having to wait, freeze all the accounts, and move things around, right? Wire transfers take 3 days, right? This allows those kinds of things to happen within minutes, very quickly. No one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. If you happen to run into him, please let me know.
It's not you.
An important thing to know, though, is Bitcoin is not blockchain. Bitcoin is one of the applications that runs on a blockchain. There are many, many, many more uses for blockchain, but the one you hear about because it's in widespread commercial use is Bitcoin. Today we're going to focus. We're going to talk about Bitcoin because it's a very good example, but as we do that, keep in mind we're only using Bitcoin for illustrative purposes. When I say $5 gets moved from here to there, think anything of value gets moved from here to there, because many blockchain applications don't even involve cryptocurrency. There's no payment involved. So what's a distributed network? You saw earlier we were describing blockchain as a distributed ledger. That was one of the terms we used to describe it. What is distributed? I think we all know what centralized is. Everything points to one central location, an exchange, a marketplace, and the outer edge of the network cannot communicate directly with any of the other nodes at the edge. Then there are federated networks, so you have all these star networks that are interconnected with one another. But the participants in these various networks cannot communicate directly with one another. The one on the right is a distributed ledger. The internet is a distributed network, and so that's very familiar to folks here. Okay. So what is blockchain? We're going to start talking about distributed ledgers and how they work and how they move things of value around, how they prevent the double spend problem I was describing earlier. So in this example, an entity A sends, and we're starting with a centralized third-party model. We're going to contrast it in a minute with a distributed ledger. So in the centralized ledger, A moves $5 to be started with $10. He moves $5 to B. That's recorded in the database. B is sending $3 to C. That's recorded in the central database. C is sending $1 to D. It's all in there. Now, if A, remember they started with 10, they sent 5 here, so they only have $5 left. They tried to send $15 to D. Of course, that's not a valid transaction, so that would not be completed. So that's the concept of open ledger. A distributed ledger is quite different. In a distributed ledger, every one of the nodes has a complete copy, an up-to-date copy of the database. In the Bitcoin network, there are about 6,000 nodes worldwide, and every one of them has every single transaction ever completed in Bitcoin. So a transaction that took place 7 years ago for 100 Bitcoin, let's say 1 Bitcoin, you can go find that on the blockchain because it's located, it's a copy of that specific transaction and every other transaction in every one of those 6,000 nodes. The reason for that is a blockchain transaction can never be changed. They're immutable. You can add new transactions that might reflect a change associated with a previous block, but you can't change the block that took place before. So here, let's go through that same example now. So now A sends the $5 to B. It's the same example, B to C, $3, C to A. Now, you see that's reflected, no third party, centralized party required. Every single one of the participants has a complete record of every one of those transactions. Why is that useful, right? In a traditional centralized database, or a database where a transaction where two counterparties are keeping their own database, it opens it up to potential errors. And there needs to be a lot of trust. When a transaction has a party in the middle, you are trusting that party to keep an accurate record of all the data and all the transactions, as opposed to having it a copy, up-to-date copy yourself. Every participant in a blockchain in a public blockchain, can see every single transaction that's taken place. So somebody orders 100 of something, and the other party, in a centralized environment might say, I ordered 1,000. And the seller said, no, I have 100. No, I have 1,000. Well, here they look at the same database. So there doesn't need to be a lot of trust of the other party keeping track of the transaction. Everybody can look at the same thing. Same thing happens here when A tries to send money that it doesn't have. The transaction is rejected. So how do you keep these? How do you know what a valid transaction is? How did we know that $15 wasn't valid? How do you keep all of these ledgers in place? How do you validate a transaction? In the blockchain world, they call this consensus, in a consensus method. And there are multiple consensus methods and processes, but the one that is used in Bitcoin is called proof of work. You've probably heard the term Bitcoin miner. And it's the miners that actually validate transactions. I'm going to walk through how that works on a step-by-step right now. So let's say B wants to send $5 to D. That's not at the moment still an validated transaction, has not been validated. The Bitcoin miners, and not every node in a chain is a validator. In this example, node A and node C are miners. They validate transactions. The way the validation works, and remember what we're trying to prevent here is the double spend problem. We need to make sure this is a valid transaction. Is all of the mining nodes are sent a cryptographic problem. In the case of Bitcoin, a very complex cryptographic problem. And they use a lot of processing power to guess the answer to the question. And the first one that guesses what the number is when applied to the mathematical formula yields the number that they're looking for, they've solved the cryptographic problem. When they solve the cryptographic problem, they can broadcast so they're looking for the key to the cryptographic problem that they've been sent, right? When they identify the answer, they broadcast both the block and the key to the block to all the other nodes in the network, including nodes that are not miners. And everybody, those who are also working on that problem, they say, okay, that one's been solved. I need to look for another problem to solve. They take the block with the key and they add it to their chain. Now, what happens if simultaneously two miners solve the problem and they both broadcast at the same time? The chain that has the most nodes adopt their version of the chain wins. So more than 51% of the nodes accept the key from this guy, then that's the one that gets added. And the nodes always accept the longest block. So they're always looking for new transactions to add that have been solved for. And when it comes to determining what the valid chain is, they look for the longest block in the network. Okay? And so miners are consuming a lot of computing power to solve these cryptographic problems. That means they're consuming a lot of electricity. It actually costs more in electricity in electricity than the value of the reward that they receive. For the work that they did, they receive a little bit of Bitcoin. Every time they solve a problem, the reason they're willing to do that work is the reward. So the reward is a little bit of Bitcoin. Because electricity is so expensive and because this consumes, they say, every year, as much electricity as it takes to power the country of Ireland. A lot of electricity, a lot of the mining is done in China, where electricity is much less expensive than it is in other parts of the world. So they receive that reward. That's their incentive to keep mining, to keep doing that work. So let me stop here and ask if there are questions. Is it clear? Any of the folks who know more about blockchain than I do want to jump in and elaborate or correct anything, please do that. Ronnie, was that okay?
Yeah, yes, I think spot on. I mean, I don't think there's any. I think even what you're saying right now is even. I mean, my mother wouldn't understand it all. So I mean, you should keep it at that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually bring some use case on it because I think that's more.
Yes, this
down
is
the alley of some of.
We'll bring it to life in a
Speak
moment.
about some domains that I have on. Yeah.
So keep in mind, as I said before, we used money here, and we used cryptocurrency as the example. But this thing of value that's being moved around and the validation that's taking place could be anything of value. It can be a piece of property. It can be a land record. It can be a title to something. Or
So I have a question. So we always talk about one internet, no? One internet for everyone.
yes.
So is there going to be one blockchain that covers everything, or is there going to be like
Yes.
a lot of blockchains?
That was a good description. That's a good point, and I forgot to mention that. You know, people talking about blockchain often use the term the blockchain, like there's only one, like there's only one internet. And the fact is blockchain is a technology. And a blockchain network is not owned by anyone. No one is in control, no one owns it. And there are many blockchains for different purposes. The Bitcoin blockchain is one blockchain. There are, you saw the announcement by Walmart, a food safety blockchain. They will implement a food safety blockchain. It won't necessarily be on the Bitcoin blockchain. It could be a completely separate blockchain. And there are private blockchains. Industries will implement their own blockchains that are well suited for their specific industry. And we'll talk a little bit about private and public blockchains. There are enterprise blockchains that serve, trading partners, for example, and only those trading partners are on that blockchain. So yes, there are lots of many different blockchains, and there will be many more in the future. Ronnie?
I'd like to add to that I mean, everybody is speaking about, for instance, side chains. And when we're saying side chains, it means how can you actually access various different blockchains. It's like saying all the roads lead to Rome. It doesn't happen yet when it comes to blockchain. But if you're speaking like my own dream is of course some kind of autoroute of blockchain, or the high end, the top of the blockchain, where it's like a hybrid of all the blockchains in the world where they all meet. And in that sense,
You mean
at that moment,
interoperability?
yes, and
between
that is actually,
blockchains.
it's already being worked on, but building side chains and keeping it decentralized, that is the big question in all of this. I mean, right now you can do it centralized, so that you have people actually involved, but the whole game is to make it decentralized.
Okay. You added a new concept. You added a new word to the discussion. You said sidechain. Describe what a sidechain is.
Well, I mean, sidechain is where you allow one blockchain to access another, decentralized, and peer-to-peer, yeah, without this centralized with the people involved as such.
So
yeah.
in theory, trading partners could use the Bitcoin blockchain, but because they don't want everybody participating, they'll have a side chain on the Bitcoin blockchain where they can transact with one another and apply their own rules and give visibility only to each other. Right?
Yes, and everybody is. I think everybody. Well, at least me. I'm dreaming about it, but I mean, I see the point where I had a speech at one time where I said, "Let's not compete. Let's cooperate." The new word in blockchain future is if you cooperate, take all